at some point. Welcome this morning to the first meeting of the Tompkins Intergovernmental Relations Committee for 2021, January 6th. Thanks everybody for joining us. We, as you know, don't have Anna Kellis as a member anymore. And Shauna Black is stuck in a doctor's appointment. And I understand Henry may need to leave early. So we're gonna, that plus other reasons, we have a lot of juggling on this changes to agenda item right up front. If folks don't mind, I'd like to take the things that we have to vote on first. But I'm also happy to say that Charlie Krasansky and Susan Riley and Diane Miller are here from Cornell. So that is happening first up on the agenda. Sue Dale Hall is going to be joining us. So I'm comparing this to what was sent out and posted online. So we're trying to fill people in on here. We will not be hearing from county administration. I can explain that in a little bit. And the Independent Redistricting Commission report that was listed under administration was supposed to go under, my mistake, was supposed to go under the chair's report anyway. So those, I think, are the changes from what was published. And now compared to all that, I'm going to move things. So first, if I can ask for a motion on the minutes of the December 2nd meeting. Moved by Deborah, seconded by Mike Lane. All right, any discussion or comments or changes to the minutes? Seeing none. All right, let's have a vote on the minutes of December 2nd. Mike Sigler.
Yes.
Deborah Dawson.
Yes.
Mike Lane.
Yes.
Henry Granison.
Yes.
And I'm a yes, so that's done. Great, thank you very much. And I would ask us to vote on a mess to add to the agenda, the resolution I sent last night, late last night, on the Blue Ribbon Commission. It's called Urging New York State to Establish a Blue Ribbon Commission to Reimagine and Redesign State Local Service Delivery. So I would ask for a motion to put that on the floor. Deborah moves it, seconded by, to put this on the floor, Mike Sigler. Mike, you want to talk to it? Or just your seconding?
No, I don't want to talk to it. Fine.
That was a no. Okay. All right. So just a motion to put it onto the Deborah, did you want to talk to it or?
No, I just wanted to clarify, as I understand it, this is something NYSAC is pushing, and this is us just climbing on board, right?
That's right.
Okay.
That's right. And not to, I know our Cornell folks have to go at 12, so I want to just kind of get this into the agenda and then we can come back to it and I can explain better. So a vote to add this to our agenda for today. So Mike Sigler. Mike?
Yes.
Okay, Deborah.
Yes.
Mike
Yes.
Lane. Henry Grant.
Yes.
And I'm a yes. So we'll have this on the agenda. Let us take, and Sue Dale Hall also has a hard stop at 12. So let's come to this at 12:10 and hope that Henry can stick around that long, or maybe Shauna will have joined us by then. So thank you for putting that on the agenda and we'll come back to it. So welcome Charlie and Diane and Susan. And I don't know if Zoe's here, but oh, hi Zoe. I know Zoe Nelson, also from Cornell in Albany. So nothing's happened politically, right? There's nothing going on. Why don't we start? Diane, do you have anything you would like to?
Yeah. I'm very sad that Amanda Spalletti is not here to take whatever victory lap that she could take. But there's like you said, there's a lot going on in Washington today. I think since the last time we met, the big news at the end of the 116th Congress was that Congress did pass an omnibus spending bill that was combined with a COVID relief package, not as big and not as comprehensive as we had been hoping, but I think the consensus was to do something that would sort of fill the gap until the new Congress and the new administration could do something more expansive. And so from Cornell's perspective, the omnibus spending bill was very good. It, funds all of the research and education programs that we depend on. And then as far as the stimulus goes, there's additional funding in there for higher education. And again, Cornell's intent is to use that to support our students the way that we did with the CARES Act. And while there was not the direct state and local assistance, there was a lot of sort of pass-through funding that came through in public health and childcare and some of the other block grant programs that, again, sort of can help fill some of those local gaps, but it's not, again, it's sort of not that direct assistance that we had been advocating for as part of this, big community membership. Also, there was funds for transit in there, funds for airports, and funds for small business. So again, sort of bits and pieces, and then individual support with the unemployment. So sort of bits and pieces, but again, not nearly comprehensive. And so we figure that the first order of business, once all of the ceremonial business gets taken care of in Washington, is to continue to advocate for a more comprehensive relief package that addresses sort of the full dimensions of COVID, for our students, for our faculty, and especially for our community. So the 117th Congress did get off with I don't want to say a bang because I don't want to foreshadow, violence or anything like that. But, the new members were sworn in on Sunday. The Georgia special election was held yesterday, and all indications are that both of the Democratic candidates will win, which, for us means that our senator will be, once Kamala Harris as vice president, will be the majority leader of the United States Senate. And so, because Amanda frequently comes to this meeting, I don't have to tell you guys about what a good relationship he has with our community and has been very attentive to our concerns. And so even as he's had leadership roles over the last several years, Senator Schumer has not neglected his local responsibilities or his local constituents. And so I think in that sense, we've still got a good friend there. Looking at the House of Representatives, we've got 5 new New Yorkers, most of them downstate. And I guess I'm still counting Chris Jacobs over in New York 27 as a new member as he starts his first full term in his own right. But we're still waiting to hear the final resolution of the New York 22nd congressional race. And so I was emailing with the staff who are still, so Congressman Brindisi's staff are still in the offices, and they're being supervised by the clerk of the House of Representatives. They're treating it as a vacancy. And so they're there to handle constituent concerns if you have casework that you need to do. So there's somebody there who's still sort of minding the store, but they can't take positions on legislation and that sort of thing. But they're still, so that office is still fully staffed. And again, they're just waiting the results of however that election is called. But that's the only vacancy. It's the only vacancy from the election that still exists. There are a couple of vacancies because there's a death in Louisiana, and then the appointment of a couple of members to positions in the administration. So there's still some flux, but the Democrats have maintained their majority in the House. Just in terms of, and then, today, if there was ever a time that I'm happy not to be sitting in an office a block from the Capitol, it's today, with all of the drama surrounding what should be sort of routine business of certifying the Electoral College vote. But I think when it's all done and said, Joe Biden will be certified as the next president of the United States. And then, looking forward to a mostly virtual inauguration so everybody can participate from wherever they're at or not as they choose. And so then it's just getting down to business with a new administration and, who's pledged to to do a lot on infrastructure, climate change, green energy, green economy. And so lots of opportunities there that we will, continue to pursue, both as an institution of higher education and as a member of the broader community. And so we'll be, looking forward to working with all of you as this new administration takes hold. And so that's sort of that's a high level summary of what's going on in Washington. And so if you have questions or anything, but I think Charlie's got an equally interesting report from Albany. So
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe we should just go right to Charlie. Everybody write down your questions, and also if we don't get time, we can certainly email. Everybody here's real responsive on email too. So go ahead, Charlie.
You're muted.
You're muted, Charlie. Being very profound, we know. But
no, I just said, I don't have nearly the drama that Diane has. Albany is, a sleepy provincial town, not the center of anything these days, except this budget deficit, which everything Diane talked about will lead to it. We believe, everybody's of the belief that with Democrats in control in both houses in Congress and Joe Biden after he's there in the White House, then they can work out a deal and there'll be more. We don't know how much, nobody knows or when, but more stimulus that would be directed for state and local governments. So that's the good news. Good news is, and the governor, that's why the governor has put off his state of the state. That's why his budget is not coming. They're not putting it together yet because he's been stalling to see what the news out of Washington would look like. He's been all year, he's been trying to put the pressure on Washington and waiting so that he wouldn't have to do a dramatic cut and then add money back, that he could just do it with a final. It's crazy. We're in January, the fiscal year ends the end of March, and we still don't have final numbers on any state programs or a plan for next year. And nobody's ever seen this before, but that's how the governor has played this out. So for us, again, so many things we care about. We just don't know the final numbers, how much we can, spend of state money for the current year. We won't know that until the governor and the legislature. I think they're going to negotiate the current year budget and next year's budget at the same time, given what they believe or have in hand or think they'll have in hand. Let's say before April, but then also into next year, I think they'll come up with their best estimates, and then they'll add borrowing. I think they'll do some borrowing, a good amount, is my guess. And who knows about taxes and what they work out. Again, it's not the governor himself. This is all going to be negotiated with the legislature. And again, we have super majorities in both houses, Democrats in charge in both houses, a lot of new members. They put the Senate put out their committee leadership yesterday. We saw that, and so I think what I've been told by Cuomo people is that when they do the state, Zoe said, the state of the state's going to be on successive days. Virtually, they've broken it down into chunks next week rather than one big speech virtually. And I'm told that they'll be basically announcing things that they've already done. So instead of saying we'll spend all this new money on, it'll be instead, we've cut the ribbon on, we've opened this, we're halfway completed with that, things that they've already announced and already budgeted for, instead of committing new money, because they don't have new money. But infrastructure is that one area. It's a Cuomo specialty. The state can go into debt for it. That's how they finance infrastructure. And Diane talked about it. It's also a big priority in DC. So that's where I think everything will naturally come together. That's where you can expect the state to invest their resources over the next few years in infrastructure. It's just, it's easier to finance, and it'll fit in with priorities out of Washington as well. So I don't know that we know a lot more than that.
that's a lot. That's good. Zoe or Susan, did you want to add anything?
The one thing that I will say to add to Charlie's report, because I forgot to mention it in mine, is that our regional representative, our former regional representative for in Senator Gillibrand's office, is now Assemblywoman Sarah Clark. So she has joined the state legislature from Albany, and we've met Senator Gillibrand's new regional representative, a man named Jared Jones, who is terrific and probably somebody that you should invite or consider inviting at some point to this meeting as well. So,
He was here last month.
oh, so I missed it.
Yes. No, I'm glad have you actually met him in person?
We've Zoomed, and so he's one of the few Senate staffers. So Amanda won't use video on Zoom, but Jared will. So I thought that was nice.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Diane. Zoe, were you going to say something? Okay, Susan? All right, committee questions, comments? Deborah? All right, Deborah and then Mike?
Yeah, I'm glad that Diane clarified. My husband and I were just talking this morning. If Ossoff wins, who's the majority leader in a 50-50 split? And I guess Kamala makes it 51. But with such a narrow margin, I mean, have you ever experienced this?
Yeah, so when I was working on Capitol Hill, the Senate was split 50-50. And then this was when Jim Jeffords changed his party and then gave the Democrats the outright majority. But yeah, this has happened. So 2001 was the last time that there was a 50-50 split. And the way that the Senate addressed it at the time was they said, we're just, so whoever the vice president is the tie-breaking vote. So you Republicans are in the majority, but we're going to split everything basically 50-50. So we'll have even ratios on committee. We will have an even division in majority minority staff. So everybody will have the same sort of resources to do their business. It's not clear that they will continue that will be the way that they organize in this Congress. Mitch McConnell is certainly making the case for it. I saw something in my press clips this morning that he said, well, I expect that we will do what we did in 2001.
Oh, really?
So Senator Schumer hasn't said anything about that yet. And so again, it sort of hasn't been certified yet. So he's not officially the majority leader. So, but he has a lot of discretion as to how they, what rules the Senate will adopt this year. But I think because of the rules of the Senate and sort of the peculiar, supermajority requirement if anybody objects, then it takes 60 votes to get to a motion to proceed. And so legislation doesn't come under consideration. So there's a lot of need to work together, and anybody can still be a spoiler. And to say that Mitch McConnell or the Republicans wouldn't have any power in this is completely...
Oh, no, I think they're going to be as obstructive as they possibly can.
Exactly. Yeah,
will they split the committee chairs? I was wondering about that because Martha sent us a list of committee chairs, and I'm wondering if
that was for the state Senate.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
So the Democrats will be the chairs, and so as chairs, they get to decide, what hearings do they call? They get to call the majority of the witnesses, and then as majority leader, Senator Schumer has the ability to decide what legislation is considered on the floor. So he's got, that prerogative, and so I know that was one of the concerns with the COVID relief package was that, the House passed the HEROES Act and the Senate never took it up because Senator McConnell wouldn't schedule a vote on it. It's just so that's not going to be an issue in this Congress. But again, because of the filibuster and the supermajority type of motion to proceed rules, then the Republicans still retain some influence. Where 50 votes are necessary. So in confirmation hearings, only 50 votes necessary. So this will allow Biden, to confirm his cabinet secretaries and judges if there are judicial nominations. And then we don't have enough time to talk about all the nuances of the reconciliation process, but that's a way that possible COVID relief could go through without having to deal with this supermajority 60 vote filibuster threshold, because it's budget. It's a budget bill, a budget tax, a revenue / budget type bill. And so again, this is, I did not work in the Senate, so I'm not a master of Senate procedure. I know just enough to know, but they only get one opportunity to do reconciliation in a year. And so, they've got to sort of pick whatever it is that they want to do wisely. And so I'm sure that that's something that they're thinking about right now. And so that would be the question to ask Amanda the next time you meet, and if is how they're going to approach that.
Okay,
issue this year.
she did say she'll be here next month. Let's go to Mike Lane and then see if we have any questions on the state side.
I had a question on the state side.
Okay. I'm on the federal side. It's interesting. I think the idea of trying to be as amenable as they were in 2001 and give equal committee membership. I have some comments about that, but I think, all right, let's go to the state side then. Mike, go ahead.
I just wondered, Charlie, we asked you last time if you'd heard anything about community colleges, and I really appreciated the comment you made. We got something from Orinthia Montague, the president of TC3, saying that the new chancellor has worked out a deal with the Naval, something called the Naval Community College. And I guess concern there becomes, is that going to be another chargeback issue for us counties for attendees at the Naval Community College? And are we going to get another situation like the Fashion Institute, quote unquote, community college? If you heard anything.
Yep, I'll take a crack at that, and then maybe Zoe wants to jump into. We had a good conversation yesterday with some staffers in the assembly on this sort of topic, and so I'll address that first one, but then Zoe will follow up with maybe a bigger picture about SUNY and some things what people are looking for with enrollment and budget. So yeah, this chancellor, very hands-on, knows the system, also knows PR, and works for the governor. And I think this was more of a PR move. Every few days, at least, he puts out a press statement that he's done a new partnership. He's done a new something or other. And so I didn't see this as being significant. I saw this as, something they could announce to have, another, an offer of assistance to some veterans of something that they didn't have access to before. But I don't see it as a big, costly initiative, frankly. I think I'm right, just based on how I read it, that first of all, they don't have money for a costly initiative. But at the same time, I will say, he is somebody who I think could spend money differently. Instead of every campus being treated the same, as in like everybody gets a 5% cut, I think he is someone who will have opinions on, well, you know what, that campus has an enrollment increase, or they have a special situation, or for some reason, we're going to treat them differently than somebody else. I think I would look out for those things. We don't know any more than you at this point, but I would not be surprised if there were some ups and downs rather than just everybody being treated the same. And maybe Zoe can talk a little bit about, again, we keep bringing up community colleges and individual campuses because we think it is possible, or more than possible, that we're going to have some of that back and forth. But
yeah, I think there's going to be, within the SUNY budget, cuts or reductions in general. Like Charlie said, it's possible that they are, that they will pick and choose rather than doing across the board by sector. There's been rumors about community college, consolidation or, reworking. Those are rumors. There's really nothing down at all. I do know that the chancellor does appreciate different learners. So he is a person who, he came from Empire State College, but he's been within this higher education, world in New York for a long time, doing a lot of the policy, and talks about access for lots of different individuals, not just the 18 going to college from high school. And I think there is that appreciation for community colleges. And I think some of these actions, and again, this is just me speculating, this, and then also the online training and the GED, and getting people really revved up to get into or back into a community college or a four-year institution. And then this announcement as well is perhaps really trying to focus and getting enrollment up in those areas. And then maybe seeing where that goes and where the strengths and weaknesses are. Again, that's just me speculating. There hasn't been any announcements, one way or the other. There are rumors because enrollment is down in community colleges. And that is different across the state, of course, as well.
I'll just add, Mike, that we're concerned for the community college. We're also concerned for Cornell, because we have contract colleges, we get SUNY funds, but we're also different. You see, so we're not just your standard, it's a little more complicated at Cornell. And go back a long time in the past, when SUNY had a budget under a previous governor, SUNY had a budget hole, and they chose within SUNY, they decided, oh, we're going to cut Cornell more than the other campuses, because Cornell, private side of Cornell, does have tuition control. SUNY campuses don't. So we're concerned that if they do picking and choosing, Cornell might come on the short end of the stick. A local community college could. We just don't know. We're just on the lookout for all that.
Thanks so much for paying attention to this and your comments about both of you, Zoe and Charlie, on that.
So that kind of reinforces, Charlie, something you said a few months ago about a wise move to just cultivate a personal relationship with Malatras, that he had a good visit with Dr. O here, what was it, August or whenever it was, and that the college should probably be as proactive as possible in continuing to cultivate that relationship.
Exactly.
Okay, great. All right, any other questions from committee members? And welcome, Sean, I'm glad that you're here.
Thank you.
Okay. I would just comment to reinforce Diane, what you said earlier about Senator Schumer, that regardless of party, regardless of political policy and whatever, the idea of having the majority leader be our senator who knows us personally and with whose staff we have a direct relationship is a gift. I mean, I think you have to look at, for example, he personally pushed the Save Our Stages funding in this COVID relief bill because of the entertainment district and the industry in New York. So, we can expect, and he's done a number of things over the years, for example, on Medicaid, that have been enormously helpful for county governments in New York State. So,
yeah, I probably should have mentioned this too, that because the margin in the House is so tight, this bipartisan problem solvers caucus that Tom Reed heads has really the opportunity to be sort of a pivotal voting bloc that could be persuasive in close votes. And so if they do stick together and do operate truly in a bipartisan manner. And so, that's, again, this is our local congressman who sits at the top of that voting bloc too. So some opportunity for there as well.
You're absolutely right. I mean, I've thought about that a number of times when seeing him on national news, et cetera. And I agree. There's bizarrely could be a unique opportunity for bipartisan action that we haven't been able to see in so very long. So,
so I'm going to have to scoot out, but it was nice to see everybody and Happy New Year.
Thank you, Diane. Thank you so much for being here. Just one other word is about our new state senator as well, taking the seat that Jim Seward was in. So that's 4 towns on the eastern side of the county. Peter I I keep getting this wrong, Oberacker. Got a little info on him in our packet. Mike Sigler has said he's already reached out and can probably have him come to a meeting in the near future to meet him directly. So I don't know if you've met him. And I'm sure everybody's watching the Brindisi-Tenney race too. So, all right. Thank you, Charlie. Thank you, Zoe and Susan. And stick around if you can, but we really appreciate it, your time. Happy New Year.
You as well. Bye-bye.
All right. Take care. All right, Sue, welcome. We know that you've had some good news, and tell us what's going on, and if there's anything in particular that it would be helpful if we could push.
Okay, so just to give you a little bit of a wrap up for the 2020 funding for childcare. The relief package was 164 million, I believe, for New York State that came from the feds, and that funded CARES 1, 2, and 3, and we are still distributing some of that funding. It was supposed to be all spent out by the end of the 31st, but we're still submitting claims on behalf of the providers. And I checked in with the state. We won't know until the end of March whether it's all been spent or not. If I look just at our local funding, we still have funding to go. Most of it's in the scholarships for parents who are also essential personnel. That's where we have the most funding available. So that's to be determined. The 2021 funding did look good for childcare, not as good as one would have hoped. We had projected that nationally we needed 50 billion and 10 billion came into the block grant for childcare. What that translates for New York State, the Center on Law and Social Policy estimates that to be about 450 million, so it's better than double than what we had last year. And I think one of the real big lessons learned in implementing the CARES funding was that it just created an enormous administrative burden for childcare programs. And we know that our home-based programs especially felt that, but it was true for all different types. It was really unexpected, and the rules for it changed pretty frequently. So people would submit a request, get it approved, then they would change the rules. So they had to do budget amendments and all kinds of other machinations, which were really difficult and not normally part of the administrative responsibilities of a child care program. So when we think about funding in 2021, that's going to be a real big feature of what we're going to advocate with New York State. They have to make it easier to manage for programs. Child Development Council got a 5% admin boost out of it, which didn't come close to covering our costs for managing all the changes that we faced throughout the year. So really our advocacy efforts are going to be around the child care programs and what they need, but it does translate to our organization as well. So the very first thing will be to ask them to lift the administrative burden, to make this, make it a smoother process. And the second thing that we're hearing from people, when they put the money into the block grant, most of the block grant is for subsidy, childcare subsidy. And there's a mandated quality, what they call quality set aside, that pays for the state's registration process. It pays for childcare resource and referral and specialized services for infants and toddlers. The requirements for the relief funding within the block grant framework were lifted. There were many areas that were lifted. The rules were changed. So that's the good news. They are allowing an expansion. More parents can be moving to an 85% of median income, which means more parents could be eligible for childcare subsidies. I'll have to say that we don't spend all that we have allocated in Tompkins County, and this is mirrored across the state because again, the rules are prohibitive for a lot of families. It's very challenging. So that I don't want to get into too much detail about what works there and what doesn't, but we've been working for years and years on trying to make that a better process. They are also allowing us to fill in gaps for fixed costs and for operating. So trying to increase the sustainability. And this has probably been the biggest problem that we faced in childcare, is making sure that we can sustain the programs who either had a reduction in services because of COVID guidelines, or completely closed because they didn't have enough to sustain enough revenue at all to sustain a program. And we are working very hard at getting them reopened. That's most heavily in the school age programs. We have a high turnover, high loss in that area, and we're hoping they'll all recover. But we don't know at this point. So one of the challenges in that language is that supporting operating revenue usually comes on a reimbursement basis from New York State. And I think the feds would probably just say, oh yeah, show us the receipts and that'll be fine. Our experience with CARES program is that we are still reimbursing expenses that happened in July. And that's a financial float that childcare programs can't manage. They have a very thin operating margin. So in terms of what this committee could do, I do think in the future that a resolution could be helpful, even though time is of the essence in getting our messages up to New York State. We're really just, in real time right now, trying to get as much feedback from childcare providers of what does that really mean for you? How can we share that message in the cleanest way possible, because the devil's in the details. And so of all the different rule changes, that one that's on sustainability is really probably the most important to us, but how it plays out is also important.
On the question about a reimbursement versus getting cash up front.
Yes, or even just filling in expenses filling in revenue gaps. So as, all the preschool 3 and 4 year old classrooms and all the school age programs have lower group sizes, which means the revenue is down. Right. And they already operate right at full capacity. My revenue equals my expenses and I don't have a lot of float. So that's an area that it's a real different mindset to fill in a financial gap, a revenue gap. But you were talking earlier about infrastructure, and we've mentioned that here in this forum before, that infrastructure can mean grounds, highways and roads and that sort of thing, but it also means the things that our community needs to sustain itself, like childcare and education. So I'd really like to frame it and let people know that this is our only opportunity really in the near future. If we don't make some substantial structural changes now, we're going to lose a lot. We'll lose a lot.
We are eager to help in any way we can. I know you have a quick, just a few more minutes. Shauna, go ahead.
Hey, Sue, I was wondering, I know that whenever you came to our Health and Human Services meeting last year, you talked about there were some family home daycares that were about to open. And I was wondering if with COVID coming along, has that changed people's minds? Have other people decided to do home daycare since maybe they don't have their past employment?
So we're not seeing the translation into formalized care of people who lost their income, past employment, but some of them are moving to informal care where they don't have to be regulated. We saw a few openings, but not very many happen. We saw the reopening of a lot of family childcare, home-based and centers this summer. And the biggest challenge they have now are quarantines and changing group size and 2-week gaps. We're pretty fortunate in this community that we've gotten, the Child Development Council's received some foundation funding to fill in some of that revenue gap for folks and try to help with emergencies. We just had, I got a text the other day, my boiler blew up, what am I going to do? I can't do childcare if I don't have heat in the house. So, we do have some resources to help support that kind of emergency need right now. And our belief is we keep it all flowing. As much as we can keep childcare operating, it's better for our community. But so it's real uncertain funding from their perspective, because it's sort of this open and closing. And that's why a lot of the school age programs haven't operated. Because
Yeah.
parents are like, you know, I don't know if they're homeschooled or not homeschooled, and they're not going to commit to a expense for after school when they don't
Yeah, no, that's right.
know.
Great, thank you.
Mhm.
Any other questions from committee members? Well, as you said, if you're figuring this out in real time, what your providers need, what your families need, please let us know. And if you want to work on a resolution, I'd be happy to work on that with you. If you have something in time for, say, the January 19th legislature meeting, we could even consider a short committee meeting ahead of time so that we could pass it through and send it to the legislature, if that helps. The fact that it does seem that Cuomo is really taking a very cautious wait and see, you know, not making permanent decisions until he sees what happens in Washington, is an opportunity perhaps to try to move the needle on how these things are defined. So
Mhm.
that we can do to make that work. So, all right. Anything else that you'd like to share before you take off?
That's my short and sweet for right now.
Okay. Well, it wasn't 50 billion in the CARES bill in the COVID Act, but twice. Yeah, last year's good. That sounds good.
Yeah.
All right.
Definitely.
Thank
All right,
you.
thank
so much,
you.
Sue. Appreciate
Gotta
it.
run. Mhm.
Okay, thanks. Have a good day. Okay. Everybody take a breath. So we have a few things. I guess the rest is us, right? It's just us. So I did send a number of things as attachments just for discussion. But the one thing to vote on that maybe we should go ahead and do before we might lose any other members. Shauna, before you got here, we did add to the agenda the resolution on this Blue Ribbon Commission that I'd sent last night. I hope you got to see that.
Okay, yeah.
So we did add it to the agenda. So if I would like to entertain a motion to put it on the floor for a discussion and hope a vote. Deborah moves it, Shauna seconds. So thank you very much. This is urging New York State to establish a Blue Ribbon Commission to reimagine and redesign state local service delivery. This picks up on the document that NISAC had put together in November, and we had Ryan Gregoire from NISAC come here and talk about it with us. Jason sent it. It was like 14 pages or something like that. Sent it to department heads for their comments. He's gotten comments back from department heads. I've seen it. Frankly, it's pretty technical. I mean, we had looked at it. We had looked at that whole document ourselves. And I think I heard from a lot of you that by the time you got to the DSS stuff, it was like way above our pay grades. So Jason wants to come to the next meeting. Oh, and Susan, I should have mentioned Charlie and Zoe and Diane were here, and also Sue might know this, that in January, we kind of reshuffle the year's committees. So we don't know for sure if there's going to be a Tiger committee next year for 2021. We don't know who's on it, et cetera. We're just going to assume at the moment that we will meet in February. So I'll pretend that's going on, but there could be some changes. So Jason would plan to come to Tiger next month with more reaction from staff, especially as we see what Cuomo will do with state budget. So that's why we pulled that off of the earlier agenda. But what does come out of that NISAC document, and Jason, I checked with him and he agreed it would be a great idea to do it. And he, in fact, said he would like to be on it. So that's why I pulled this together. It basically takes language from NISAC's document about why, about the opportunity to take a hard look at things in how New York State programs are delivered and funded. So that's the background of this. So I'm happy to answer any questions or, take any suggestions for it. I don't know if everybody had a chance to read it. Deborah?
Yeah, this isn't something that we would put in the resolution per se, but my main concern with this process is that it not be so heavily weighted in favor of state representatives that it's just going through the motions and we don't end up with real relief.
Mhm. Yeah,
Because that happens a lot. I mean, look at the CLCPA, the Climate Action Council and the advisory groups. They're just really, really heavily weighted and controlled pretty much by the governor.
mhm. True. I did, NISAC's description of this thing was much more towards the line of counties are in a fiscally unsustainable position. We have to have this commission basically so that we can not have to spend so much. I rewrote it a bit with a tone of that we should rethink how the programs are designed and delivered. Not necessarily that counties don't, we have to relieve counties of money, because it seemed to me asking the state for a commission that says, we want a blue ribbon panel to figure out how we can.
When they've got a $16 billion deficit, that's not gonna get anywhere, I know.
Yeah, no, that's why I kind of put in there about a collaborative search for the best ideas in the nation. That there are 50 states in the union use different combinations of state and local funding and administrative structures to pay for and deliver the services people depend on. That kind of language. So I tried to make it more, kind of open-ended, basically, not just a NISAC look, but less of a cost burden on counties. Because honestly, if the state actually took over everything about Medicaid, including all the bills, then a lot of other things go away, for example. So I don't, you're absolutely right. We don't want to end up with something that's going to cost us more. That'd be bad. But this is kind of a shot to toss this into the mix and, hope we might be able to build some kind of consensus that might make something happen. Yeah, no way,
Ways of doing things that could save both the counties and the states money. That would be a win-win.
Absolutely. I mean, how do 49 other states do Medicaid? And if it really were to cost that much more, for the taxpayers, would 49 other states do it that way? I don't think so. Any other comments or suggestions or amendments on this?
Thank you, Martha, for drafting that up.
You're welcome. You're welcome. I literally did mostly copy it from NISAC's thing. While I was watching election returns last night, I confess. Are we ready to vote on it? Okay. All right. I'll start with Henry. Henry, you there?
So,
Go ahead, Henry.
yes,
Are you voting on the resolution?
yes.
So that's a yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks so much. Mike Sigler. All right. I'll go back and come back to Mike, Shauna,
Yes.
Mike Lane,
Yes,
Deborah.
Yes.
I'm a yes. And Mike Sigler?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. All right, Henry, those are our votes. If you want to go take care of your health, please feel better. We hope you feel better.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you very much for supporting this. That's great. In the new outline of what we were going to talk about, I had Peter Oberacker. It's just an unusual name. Mike Sigler, you know him. Can you, and I pulled a few things out of the, off the web, which it was kind of hard to find any real bios except for a few paragraphs on his campaign website. There's really nothing on the state Senate website about him yet. Mike, do you want to give us a thumbnail about Peter, who's going to be our new state senator from the towns of Groton, Dryden, Caroline, and Danby?
Yeah, well, I mean, he was in the CIA for 20 years, so that may be why you don't know.
No.
I'm kidding. No, he's not.
Okay.
He from Shenivas, which I find very difficult to pronounce. Really a self-made kind of person. He did a lot with food additives and food flavors and things like that. Began the company and then actually moved all the operations to upstate New York against probably all advice, but that's what he did. Now he's, he ran for the Senate at the same time he was opening a winery. So that winery is opening this year, which I thought was kind of interesting. I'm like, yeah, I'd try to put more on your plate. But the nice thing about Peter is that he comes out of local government. I mean, he started as a town representative, went on to become the county representative on the county. I think they have a board up there, so county board, and now has moved on to the state Senate. So obviously knows a lot about, say, Medicaid and the costs that are imposed upon the county. Very much, I think, kind of in the mold of Pam Helming, which is nice that she's his next door neighbor too. She came out of county government the same kind of way and out of town government. So I think he's going to lean pretty heavily on her. And I mean, they obviously know the Senate has changed quite a bit in a very short period of time, where it used to be, Republican control. It's now not even close to being that. It's, it's down 20 seats or so. So they'll definitely represent us to the best of their ability, but also are under the understanding that they're in the minority and we'll have to do a lot of things to kind of get things passed. So. But interesting guy, certainly a business background, knows how to make a payroll and knows local government. So very accessible person though.
That's good. I did, any other comments or questions from folks? Thank you, Mike. I did listen to the WHCU interview. Does sound like a, personally perfectly reasonable person and nice guy. And the company, what's it called, Michael? I can't remember. It's in that stuff I sent.
Right. I can't remember the name offhand, but yeah, it's like a food, flavorings and things like that. Has its own, commercial kitchen that they come up with new designs on food, basically.
And that's all in Skenevus, huh?
Yep. He moved the whole operation there, actually.
Okay, and he, I went back to the NISAC blog that pointed out these 3 or 4, maybe 4 newly elected state lawmakers who had come out of county government, and they didn't have him down there. So I sent the note over to Ryan Gregoire so that they can kind of get to know him too. So I agree with you. It'll be certainly helpful to have another person who's walked in our shoes, so to speak. You said you've already put out an invitation to this committee for whenever we meet next month or so?
Yeah, I'll certainly do that. I just wanted to see what the scheduling was going to look like for your committee, so and see how, because there was talk of maybe this committee meeting once every 2 months as opposed to every month. So I was going to wait to see what happens with that.
Yeah, I did. So anything else about Peter Oberacker? Anybody have questions or comments? Okay. I did about Tiger meeting every other month. I did talk to Sean and Leslin and made a pitch that first off, Katrina, if we understand workload in the office is an issue, your minutes are encyclopedic. They're so rich and full of detail, but we're good if you summarize more. It's okay. You don't have to take as much time writing out every detail of the minutes, but so if that helps on the workload, there's one piece. But I also said I thought it would be a real priority to keep, for this group to keep meeting through the end of June every month because of the state calendar, and especially this year with what's likely to happen early in the year on the federal side, that it would just be almost worthless to meet every other month because things happen so fast. So I hope that that'll persuade. I said in perhaps after, July and on, maybe something like a September meeting and a November meeting would be sufficient. I mean, I'd be interested in all your comments on that. What do you think about, and obviously we could call additional meetings anytime that we wanted to. So happy to open up to your thoughts on that. Deborah.
Well, I agree with you, Martha, that at least for the first half of the year, given everything that's going on in Albany and Washington, it's probably a good idea if we meet monthly. But after that, in normal times, we could probably meet quarterly even. But these times are just not normal.
Mm-hmm. Well, I would say that the state schedule is going to always be that way, that all the action happens through June. So anybody else? I mean, we're kind of dealing one year at a time anyway. Mike.
Yeah, I've spoken before on the floor and other places. I think this has been an excellent committee. Martha, you've done a great job chairing this and putting us in contact with the state and federal officials' offices, and it's been totally educational. It's been give and take. You heard some comments this morning about, well, you ought to get so-and-so in here to your meeting because that would be a good thing to do. And I think that that's really important. I realize this is set up as a special committee. The special committee doesn't have to be only for a few months. Special committees have gone on in the past for 2 or 3 years. Who knows? Maybe at the end of a year or two of this, we want to have it as a standing committee, which we could be done if leadership decided that. But it does give us this lobbying lever that we didn't have before, other than getting on the car and going off to Albany, and once in a while to Washington.
Thanks very much, Mike. Katrina, you can put that much detail in the minutes. Thank you very much, Mike. Appreciate that. Deborah.
Yeah, I think one thing that we ought to consider as we go forward is to try not to take up so much time for, the representatives from Cornell and the representatives from our representatives' offices, Schumer's staff. And I mean, they're really busy people. And we want to meet at a time when they're going to be particularly busy. For example, when the state's working on its budget process. So I don't know if it's possible, but if there's some way that we can do this so that we have people come in at specific times and not have to sit through everybody else's, like the way we did it today. We just got Charlie and Diane and Sue up front, and then they could leave. I think that we don't want to wear out our welcome with all these people who are educating us so nicely.
I want to tell you that Charlie seems to like to listen. Charlie especially, and Diane, they really want to hear what Spellacy and Allison Hunt have to say.
Well, maybe we can put those people first.
Well, they know that. In fact, they've hung in on. They've come to meetings where they haven't actually spoken. They've come just to listen. I mean, it's totally up to them. I will say, here's what we're thinking. Do you want 15 minutes and whatever? So, but
yeah, I just want us to be mindful of the demands on their time, because I don't want them to start thinking we're a pain in the butt. That's going to be really counterproductive.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Shauna.
Deborah actually said what my thoughts were as well, is like, maybe just doing the time and having people arrive at the time. And, if they want to stay, there's certainly, everyone's welcome to attend our meetings. And I know Cornell adds a lot to our meetings. But that way, they're not tied to a 2-hour meeting. So.
No, what I'm saying is it's been entirely their choice, with the exception that Amanda has always had this past year, like a noon meeting on this Wednesday. So that's why we put her in first, because that half hour is the only time she can do it. I will say, and the thing about Cornell, it's not that we are, I think it's useful to hear from them, not because we want to hear so much about what Cornell's doing, although often we do hear about Cornell specific issues, but more that because of their role with the state and federal governments, they have a lot of information that we don't otherwise have access to, as Mike has certainly shown with the questions about community colleges. So, but absolutely, I'm totally interested in additional suggestions as we go forward. Amanda Spelsey has, of course, this last couple of months had so much going on, and it may be that if things sort of settle down, it won't even it'll be appropriate to ask her every month. So, but again,
Especially if Schumer's going to be the majority leader.
If Schumer's the majority leader,
she's going to be a busy girl.
Yeah, but I'm happy to soak up a half hour of her time every month if she's willing to give it to us. So, because it really is a two-way street. We're by our questions and by our, showing what we're interested in, it really is not just an educational thing, but it functions as a lobbying point of contact in a very friendly kind of way, I think. So, all right, so that's the kind of the news on the committee stuff. I've included in there this New York State, in your packet, the New York State legislative calendar, just as a, reference point. Of course, they did have a session at the end of, between Christmas and New Year's, as you probably know. So they can add sessions or subtract, I suppose. In general, the lawmakers, well, I guess I don't know how this works since they're not really in Albany, but they used to really do their work Monday and Tuesday, maybe have some meetings Wednesday morning, but everybody leaves town by Wednesday afternoon. That's the lawmakers. Staff would be available sort of the full week, of course. So with Zoom, people might be more accessible 5 days a week if we really try to reach out to specific people. And then to go right there, that sort of leads to the committee structure. At least this is for the Senate. And you'll remember for the Assembly, there were pages of committees for the Assembly. But for the Senate, it's interesting. Stuart Cousins has added two committees on cities specifically, one for New York City and the other for other New York State cities. Added a committee on developmental disabilities, added a committee on libraries, and added a committee on procurement. So, and as I look at this list, I realize, okay, I'm trying to think of who are the people we've already had contact with last, and it's bizarre to think when we were in Albany, it was less than a year ago, Deborah, you remember? It was February last year. I was like, that's
I thought it was at least a decade.
I know. But we met with Hal McCabe from Rachel May's office in the Aging Committee. I'll point out that Michelle Hinchy, new senator who's chairing agriculture, is Maurice Hinchy's daughter, in case you weren't sure of that. We have met with the local government, person, Gorin, where'd it go? Local government, James Gorin, I think. We met with him last year, and also on the Senate, on the Assembly side, Gorin, for some of the measures that we were interested in. We met with Brad Hoylman on judiciary related to the third county court. We met informally with Senator Liz Kruger in the hallway. So there's, we have had, and then we met with Kevin Parker, staff person, if you remember, that's in the Energy Committee, Energy and Telecommunications. So we have, and then we met with Andrea Stewart Cousins and her staff as well. So we have had direct contact with a number of these people. As we see what the issues, how the issues break out, we can really we should really think about which staff and legislators we would like to set up meetings with. As Charlie mentioned last month, it might be much easier with Zoom to just get 15 minutes on a Zoom call and be able to, to have a say about things that are going on in Albany. So that's why I've given you kind of these as resources. Any questions or comments or suggestions on any of that? Okay, the redistricting, I've got the redistricting issue down here. I believe the commission met yesterday, but I'm not positive, but I think I sent you an article about that. It looks like it might be hopelessly deadlocked. In the 2014 law, setting up the Independent District Redistricting Commission, they set up a structure of 4 appointed by.
I would love lunch.
What, Mike? You?
Nothing.
Oh, you
So,
at lunch? We
yes, soon.
Okay. So the Redistricting Commission set up like 4 Democrats and 4 Republicans and 2 supposedly independent, but one of those appointed by Democrats and 1 appointed by Republicans. So it didn't really turn out to be so independent. It seems really a 5-to-5 commission. Apparently they couldn't even agree on a chair yet. So I don't know what'll happen. Last time we redistricted, the courts drew the maps for the congressional districts. And I don't know whether that's still in the works and if this commission is just looking at the state seats. It'll be interesting. And so I'm putting this on the agenda as a heads up because it'll be really important. We can, if anybody
If
else,
the census numbers are ever finalized, yeah.
right. Mike, Lane.
Yeah, that the last time you're exactly right, Martha. There was a special master appointed to do the congressional district. I think that's why we got attached to the Western New York district, which we've never been attached to before. That special master had a plan already devised that was immediately instituted, never held a public hearing, never justified any of the lines that were drawn other than I guess some mathematical equations that was done. I was trying to remember who the master was, but I think they were out of the SUNY college down where Mr. Benjamin was down in what was his name? He recently retired.
Gerald Benjamin.
Gerald. He was an expert on New York State Constitution, etc. But I don't think that's going to happen again this time because you've got a unified political government, and I'll be real surprised if anything that this commission comes up with that isn't set up for approval by the majority would make it through. I just, every time I look at things like this, I just get so I see that we didn't have a constitutional convention, which is what we needed.
Deborah?
So I'm curious if the commission's deadlocked and cannot produce a proposed redistricting to present to the state legislature, the composition of the state legislature won't really help, will it? I mean, this question's for Mike. I'm not familiar with this process at all.
Well, I'm not familiar with the new process because that was with the law, but nobody was happy with the law the way it was because it really wasn't an independent commission. So that means it's not really independent. It's going to go back to the legislature, ultimately. It's a little like our county commission, but we didn't have any choice. We can't delegate the authority to a commission to make final decision. We have to decide what they recommend. In the 2 times that it's operated, we've always said we will do what they say, what they do recommend. We have never altered that, but I'm not so sure that would happen with the state legislature.
Well, we really nailed that custard pie to the wall, didn't we?
Well, it's a process we've never seen happen before. So.
I know. It seems like everything we're facing is something that's never happened before.
I think you're right.
Right. I mean, we can, maybe I could reach out to, I'm thinking Hank DeLay might be following this. I'll reach out to Hank and see if he's following it all and if he's got any wisdom to share. I don't think this is anything we're going to be effective in lobbying one way or another. I would assume.
I would hope we could get back to where we used to be. We're gonna lose 2 seats probably under the census, which seems like every census we lose 2 congressional seats. That means that it usually is 1 downstate and 1 upstate. So things are going to change. Districts will get larger upstate geographically, and I would like to argue that we should be attached to the central New York area the way we used to be.
It's interesting. I think if population is leaving upstate, can they really argue to take out a downstate district if they're actually not?
Well, I think it's leaving downstate too. I don't know. We'll have to. The census figures aren't getting to the president by December 31st, the way they were supposed to. I don't know when they'll get to them. So what the legislature is going to have to do about redistricting, I'm not sure, but we are going to have congressional elections in 2022, and you got to have districts.
Right. All right. Let me reach out to Hank. I mean, in the olden days, they used to lobby hard. I know Maurice Hinchey had an aggressive lobbying campaign.
He hired a lobbyist.
Yeah, to keep Danby, the town of Ithaca, and the city of Ithaca in his district. I mean, talk about gerrymandering. I mean, that was certainly, Democrats do it as much as Republicans do it. And
right.
I think there's an argument that you don't want to bring a knife to a gunfight. If one side's gonna do it, you can't unilaterally disarm. So to get a little political here, but if it's something that the committee's interested in, I'll reach out to Hank and see what he thinks. And okay. All right. What I was trying to say is I don't know that there's any lobbying opportunity for us.
Well, we won't know until he informs us.
Yes. Okay. I'll check in with Hank. So, and if anybody else wants to follow up and dig into it at all, please, by all means, and you can, and as a general matter, bring any issues y'all would want us to dig into, please bring to this committee. I've assumed that the climate, the CLCPA stuff that we've been involved in, we've sort of taken through peak. and through the case board, hadn't brought it,
Right.
just not to duplicate and stuff, but anybody at any time, bring anything, you know, that you think we should be following along to us. All right, that's kind of what I've got. Anybody else have your own report or comments or topics to bring up?
Breaking news, excuse me. Go ahead, Deb.
Go ahead. Breaking news.
Breaking
ahead, Mike.
news, Chuck Schumer has declared himself the majority leader.
Sorry, Mike Sigler. We'll just put out there, this is from the point of view of the influence of Tompkins County and wow, that's great. Okay. All right.
Just Martha, I'm just waiting for my $2,000 check now. So this is what
Sweetheart, I think you might get one.
Yeah, you can put that, you can put that towards your fireplace, Mike.
which was much more expensive than I anticipated. Just so you
But
know.
you get more than $2,000 because you got a wife and kids.
That's right.
Well,
Ooh.
my wife will get more money than not me. 2,000 is all I ask. So.
Okay.
And free healthcare. So I'll get that too.
Listen, guys, I think what this means is state and local aid is for real. I mean, it is showing up that Cuomo will have been kind of really brilliant on all these delays, that we may end up in much better shape than we would have been. Okay.
When Alexandria, though, runs against Schumer and wins the primary, does she become speaker? Does she become the head of the Senate?
That's okay. I'm not holding.
No, doesn't work that way.
No. No. Dick Durbin would have something to say about it. All right, Deborah, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate what I mentioned last night. I think at our next peak meeting, we're going to pass a resolution in support of that OWASCO watershed rules and regulations thing. Not so much because we think that the substance of the rules and regulations are correct, but because we really want to impress on the state that they should allow localities to pass their own rules governing their watersheds. So, I mean, that's kind of intergovernmental, but
Yeah,
Gotcha.
absolutely. That's good to know. All right, thank you very much. And on the climate change, all the climate change committees, we did have the local government leaders, whatever, roundtable last month, and that was, I think, it was very informative. There were a lot of really impressive folks on the call, not including myself. So not just a few county leaders, but also state, city and local and town government, some village leaders. It was really very interesting. And there was a call from a couple of the local government advisory panel members that the roundtable meet again and that we be put in touch with other panels such as the power generation panel, the housing and energy efficiency panel for two, and maybe transportation as well. So there's also a solid waste panel. I told Barb Ekstrom about it. And so I hope she's going to be following that too. So, all right, well, if there's nothing else, for the good of the order, if this is, I'm going to assume this is not the last meeting of a committee like this. Thank you.
oh, I hope not.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed this committee.
Good.
Here, here.
Good. Thank you very much. I have two, and we didn't know what this was going to be like and how this was going to work. I think it remains a work in progress. I think it'd be great if we could do more resolutions like we did today, so that we're actually kind of taking the next step. Would certainly entertain people digging into issues that they're specifically interested in, like I was about to assign redistricting to you, Mike.
I tend to get voted down on my suggestions on redistricting, at least locally.
Well, you and I was with you on a constitutional convention, so no, but we, anybody who's interested in a particular issue and you want to dive into it, please just.
Yeah, I am interested in that. I was just being sardonic, I guess.
All right. Susan, did you want to add anything?
I don't think so. As always, it's just helpful for us to listen. And certainly there's going to be more news as students start coming back in the next several weeks, and we'll have some different forums for folks to hear what's going on. But right now, nothing really new to report with, but have appreciated the being included.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining us.
Glad to have you.
Thanks,
Glad to have
Susan.
you.
You bet.
All right. Well, thank you all for the time. And I think nobody ever complained when a committee meeting ended early. So do stay. I'm going to try to watch as many of the state of this. I didn't know that the state of the state speech was going to end up as a few speeches, but it'll be good if we can try to follow along and see what he's doing and share our reactions with each other. So, all right. Do we need a motion to adjourn? All right, Deborah moves, Shauna seconds, and all in favor? Okay, thank you all very much. Thank you, Kathy and Katrina.
Bye.
Thank you.
Good
Bye-bye.
afternoon. Thanks, Susan.